Hello everyone, and today we are going to be revisiting the Dark Magician yet again, except we're going to be looking at it from a slightly different perspective. We'll be mixing it with an Invoked engine. Now this was as per the suggestion of someone in the comments on the last video, where they were commenting on the competitive viability of the Dark Magician deck. Now there are a couple of things that they have suggested that I either A, didn't go all in for, or B, just don't have the cards for. For example, Upstart Goblin I know is a fantastic card in this deck. I simply do not have it. I will not be crafting it. The fact that it is a UR is extortionate. I will absolutely not craft that card because it only really works in this deck and maybe a handful of other ones. I can't think of anything else, so I'll not be getting Upstart Goblin. But in terms of trying to make the deck a little bit more simplistic and straightforward, we do have certain things we are going to be implementing, such as Alistair the Invoker. So the idea behind this deck is you're trying to put out at least two monsters, including one of your two main normal summons, which will be Alistair and your Magician's Rod. Magician's Rod, of course, searching out your Dark Magician cards. Alistair searching for Invocation. We are running two Alistair and two copies of Magical Meltdown, which will search for Alistair. So we're essentially running four Alistair. I was initially running three of this guy, but it kept opening multiple copies of him, which didn't really suit us, so we cut it down to two. We think two of those and the two Magical Meltdown is more than enough. That should be fine. Now the idea is you want typically to set up an Invoked Macabre, which is you discard a card from your hand to negate that type of card. For example, you discard a monster to negate a monster, discard a spell to negate a spell, discard a trap to negate a trap. So you discard a card of a certain type to negate the activation of that type of card. So it is effectively an Omni Negate. You want to set this guy up. You want to try to set up your Dark Magical Circle, and if you can extend that a little bit further, you typically want to set up your Destiny Hero, Destroyer, Phoenix Enforcer. What is the catalyst for all of that happening? Well, typically for at least getting these two on the board, all you need to do is have one of your two normal summons, or sorry, have your Alistair the Invoker specifically, and either your Magician Souls or your Apprentice Illusion Magician. That's why we're playing the Illusion Magician. Because she's a very easy additional summon. She helps search for your Dark Magician. For a typical, more combo-oriented version of the deck, I think she's extremely effective. So typically you would only really need Alistair plus a special summon, basically your Magician Souls or your Apprentice Illusion Magician. If you don't have the Alistair, then of course you must have, or might have, the Magician's Rod. And what you want to do then at that stage is you want to try to set up DPE and your Dark Magician setup. So if you have your Eternal Soul and your Dark Magical Circle set up, that's great. So you're typically going down one route or the other. The central point of the deck, I would probably say, is the Phoenix Enforcer. He's your central going first core play, and everything else sort of centers around him to back him up. Which is a weird way of thinking about it, but because Dark Magician has had its own primary boss monsters taken away from it, in the form of the Dragoon and similar cards that haven't been released as of right now, we're trying to find another way to make the deck work. If you try to run just pure simplified Dark Magicians, you're going to run into too many problems for it to make actual effective sense. So we're trying to basically make it work on a grander scale. So if you have any suggestions for this version of it, we are also planning on doing a Dogmatica version, which was also suggested. I do need to craft the Elder Intus, the Elder being the fusion monster for the Dogmatica Punishment, but I think that is a wise investment because Dogmatica Punishment is quite strong. So that's fine. I will have a Dogmatica version of the deck up as well, which I would say either rivals or surpasses this version in its competitive viability, but I've yet to fully test it, so I can't make that claim as of right now. So if you do want to see that, or if you want to see any of the other content we will be posting, feel free to subscribe, get your notifications in. It doesn't cost you anything and it really does help me out, so I would appreciate it. And leave your comments down below for what you want to see. You can jump into the Discord to let us know what you want to see, as well as getting alerts for when we're going live on Twitch, where we're generating a lot of the footage and getting interacting then with people in the audience. So that's pretty much all I have to say right now. A more detailed profile will be done at the end. So for now, let's get into the gameplay. Alright, getting into game number one here. Now this is a scenario that I wasn't the biggest fan of whenever we were playing the deck, where you would have both Rod and Alistair in the hand without an extender. That does happen. We decided to go down the Rod route here. We were really hoping we could pick up a Dark Magician off of Circle's effect, but unfortunately it just wasn't meant to be, so we go into Artemis and pass. At least now, if we were to flip up our Eternal Soul, we would have a functioning target to tribute for the Rod's effect in the graveyard, which will basically just return Rod back to our hand. Our opponent goes for Terraforming here and goes into Lost World. I can't remember if this was either a pure Dinosaur deck or that stupid FTK thing they've got going on, but looking at that Pot of Prosperity, it looks as though it's going to be a legitimate strategy. Our opponent adds Duel and Lockbird to the hand, which is going to really hamper our Max C. He's going to activate Lost World and go for Miscellaneousaurus, and he's also going to summon out the Wandering Griffin Rider, so it's Adventure Dinos, which is interesting. He's going to use Duel and Lockbird after we draw our card here. That is going to be a bit of a pain, so we're not going to be drawing a lot of cards off of Max C. We're going to use Magician's Rod's effect to tribute the Artemis to add it back to our hand for follow-up. I don't believe having the 800 attack wall is going to be worth it. We would rather have the follow-up, basically. Our opponent's going to start basically comboing off. They're going to summon a token to our field. They're going to try to take it out, but protect it using their field spell so they can destroy the baby Ceratosaurus in the deck, causing them to summon then the Soul Eating Oviraptor, which will allow them to... They send a card from their deck to the graveyard, and they'll destroy the level 1... the Animador and Darkosaur to summon back a level 4. Then they exceed summon into a Volsaur. So there was a lot going on that turn. There really was. Essentially, the way this works is Lost World means that so long as one of these tokens are face up, it's the only card we can target for card effects. And secondary to that, if this were to be destroyed, he can protect it by destroying a monster in his deck. And obviously the baby dinos get effects whenever they're being destroyed. So that was the idea he was going for. Very, very cool strategy from our opponent. I do like that one. We're going to go for Magical Meltdown to add another Alistair to hand. We'll normal summon Alistair to grab Invocation. He is, of course, going to negate it using his Evolsaur Dolka, which, I mean, we knew that was going to happen anyway. We're going to now the thing about the field spell as well is the field spell actually means your Fusion Destiny cannot be negated because it protects any cards that would result in a Fusion Summon. So now we've got our DP on the field. We're going to take out the Dolka. We're going to activate then the DP to wipe out itself and the field spell. Then that makes our Link Spider big enough to take out the baby Ceratosaurus, which only gains its effects whenever it's destroyed by card effect. So we can safely get rid of it, really reduce the amount of resources our opponent has access to. We'll bring back DPE here, and we're looking kind of nice. We got some plays going on. He's going to use Miscellaneousaurus in the graveyard to banish 4 to summon a level 4 dinosaur from the deck, and when this giant Rex, when banished, will special summon itself back to the field as well. So he gets a 2 free summons and a search off the Oviraptor. Oviraptor then will add to his hand another Miscellaneousaurus, so whenever Miscellaneousaurus is discarded, it protects his dinosaurs for the rest of the turn from any card effects, so completely unaffected. He's going to use his double evolution pill to summon out the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Of course, it's going to activate, destroying a dinosaur to flip all of our cards face down. We use our DPE before we get flipped, and of course he changes the Miscellaneousaurus to protect his dinosaurs, but his dinosaurs were not our target. Our target is the Griffin Rider. We're going to take it out. Our Link Spider is of course unaffected by the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno's effect because it's a Link monster. His baby Ceratosaurus, which he destroyed, will summon a level 4 dinosaur or lower from the deck. He'll summon the Petit Pteranodon, which he will destroy to summon the Miscellaneousaurus from grave. Petit Pteranodon will then summon the Pancratops from the deck. So of course, not looking great here. Our opponent goes in for a lethal play, 35 to the face, 18 and 26. Now we barely survive here with 900 life points. It goes into Babushka. Babushka here is basically designed to lock us out, but this is where our opponent has made a huge mistake. The Babushka is only going to work against them. We draw into Magician Souls here off the top of the deck. We have our defense position DPE. We're going to use Souls' effect to send the Dark Magician to the graveyard to summon itself. We use Eternal Soul then to summon the Dark Magician from the graveyard. He tries to pop a Pancratops, but his own Babushka is stopping his effects from activating. So he really has hurt himself here. Now the Eternal Soul as well makes my Dark Magician unaffected by card effects. We're going to use Circle to banish the Conductor Tyranno. We don't even care about Babushka because it does not affect our Dark Magician. We're going to banish the dinosaur first, then we're going to swing in to take out the Babushka. Moving into main phase 2, now we can use our effects. So we're going to normal summon the Alistair to grab Invocation. Then we'll link summon into Artemis, the Magistus Moon Maiden. Souls then is going to send the Magical Meltdown from our deck from the field to the graveyard to draw 1. We just drawn down our Meltdown, so we just activated the search again. Not much out of that play. So we're going to use now our Invocation to summon out the Invoked Macabre. We have a Banish whenever we want, we have Pop whenever we want, we have Negate whenever we want. we have plays. Our opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand. They do, of course, have Miscellaneousaurus in the graveyard, but they don't have the ability to really utilize that to the fullest extent. So he draws one. It wasn't the god card he was looking for, and he passes it. So yes, of course, the turn one was a little bit shaky there. We should have gone into Alistair the Invoker instead to at least get something out of the turn. We decided to roll the dice and hope for a Dark Magician, but it didn't work out for us. What can you do? Luckily, we were able to take advantage of our opponent's plays, turn them against them, and come out on top anyways. So very, very good game. Honestly, I was convinced it was going to be a loss. Not the best showing of the deck, but it was too good of a game for me not to include. So let's get into game number 2. Alright, moving into game number 2, we are going first, and our hand is looking a little bit better than it was before. We use our circle to grab Soul Servant here from the top 3 cards of the deck. We send the Dark Magician to the graveyard to summon souls. Souls will discard the Soul Servant. Basically, as opposed to wanting to stack the top card of the deck to then add it, we just wanted the additional cards, basically, because there was... The smart decision probably would have been putting Eternal Soul on top of the deck anyway, but it wouldn't have mattered. It would have been ashed, so this worked out in our benefit. We do draw into an Imperm, which is great, so now we have the ability to stop. Our opponent is going to go into Virtual Worlds. Now, Virtual Worlds, of course, require a monster or a card to be on their field in order for their plays to work, so we decide we'll take out his monster. He might not have a way to extend into another one. They basically need to have a card on their field to get their plays rolling. So if you can prevent them from having one on their field, then Virtual Worlds really can struggle. So that was the rationale behind that play. We activate another circle. Circle grab the Salvation. Salvation will grab the Soul from the deck. Then Magician Souls will send one of our circles and our Salvation to draw 2. Our opponent has another Ash. It looks like they were having a bit of a rough hand. They really needed that monster on the board because they do have a lot of interruption. Just not a lot that they can actually actively do to us. We summon an Ash of our own to go into Verte Anaconda. Anaconda then is going to summon out our DPE by paying 2,000 life points. So we have pop one card whenever we want. We have banish one card whenever we want. Negate a monster, and we have Max C. So we're looking really strong at the minute. We've got a real prospect of winning this. Up against Virtual Worlds, which of course is a really strong deck at the minute. Our opponent goes for Emergency Teleport. We're going to use Max C. In response, we cannot stop the teleport itself, but we can get some advantage off of him summoning. So he's going to summon out his one of his Virtual Worlds here. Again, preemptively denying him the ability to make plays by popping his monster. He's going to go into the Virtual World Mayhem here. That's why we're going to use the Eternal Soul. Again, deny him having a card on his field to target with his other Virtual Worlds. The less resources he has available on the field, the better. He goes into a monster from the graveyard. We'll banish that card there. The reason we banish that one is whenever this card is sent from the field to the graveyard again next time, it's going to be banished because of its own effect. He's going to now, he does have a target, unfortunately, for his Virtual World plays. He summons out the Kieran. Kieran plus his monster go into Shen Shen. He was expecting to be able to swing over our Dark Magician to take it out, but he forgets. DPE reduces by 400 attack points. So unfortunately, our opponent didn't do the math, realized that he was too small to take out our Dark Magician or our DPE, and called it quits. So the Virtual World matchup can be a little bit rough, especially if you're going second and they already have their plays established. But if you're going first, because of the amount of spot removal in this deck, it has a very positive matchup against things that require active resources. For example, Eldritch Virtual World. To an extent, Phantom Knights, but Phantom Knights have really, really strong recovery, so it doesn't always work against them. But in general, if you can whittle down an active resource-based deck by controlling their initial output like we did here, you will see an awful lot of success. So you will. So again, very strong game number 2 against one of the top decks in the game at the minute. Let's get into game number 3. Alrighty, getting into game number 3, we have, again, one of those situations where in hand you've got your Alistair and your Rod. We're gonna go for Rod here. We're gonna grab Circle. Again, the smarter play would have been Alistair, but again, I just really love Dark Magician itself here. Now, our opponent went for Lancia off the gate here. Now, the reason we didn't want to go for Alistair with this particular turn is if we had have activated this and search for our Invocation, gone through the whole Alistair engine, we would not have been able to fusion summon. The reason being, you need to banish from your graveyard in order to get the full effect of Invocation then to go into your invoked monsters, but our opponent had used Lancia, so no banishing. That's why we went in the Rod, just to get some advantage out of the turn, and we're going to keep our Alistair basically for next turn. Our opponent's going to go in the Lightning Storm here, so before he gets Storming, we're going to use Call by the Grave on Lancia, just, you know, because there's no real reason or rhyme. It's about to get destroyed, so you may as well use it. Rod then is going to sacrifice the Artemis to add itself back to my hand. Just for next turn, our opponent goes for the Triple Tactics talent. We're going to Ash that. We don't want him drawing 2 free cards. So he's got 3 cards in hand. We're not too worried about being OTK'd here. He goes for the Tinky. Tinky grabs a Fractal. Okay, so now he's going to be able to set something up, but we're not too worried about the being 1 turn killed. Goes Rescue Cat into 2 Tri-Brigades, links his Tri-Brigades off into the Baron Blossom. Kit is going to send from deck to graveyard a Nerval. Nerval then will search his deck for another Kit instead of a Karas, I suppose. The Baron Blossom will special summon Fractal out to the field. Fractal will banish 3 from the graveyard to summon out Rugal. Then he's going to go into Berberum with his 2 link monsters, draw 1, return 1 off the Baron Blossom's effect, and then he'll link finally into Access Code Talker. He's going to try and get 5,300 points of damage here across the board to get us as close to finished as possible. So fair play to him. He's dismantled our board, he's put up a huge monster. In theory, it would be very difficult for us to come back from this, but we've got ways. So we're going to use Magical Meltdown here. Magical Meltdown actually procs him to use the Revolt, which is very interesting. I'm not sure exactly what he was thinking here. He's going to summon out his 4 Beast monsters to go into Tri-Brigade Shurag the Ominous Open. Shurag then is going to banish a card on the field, so it's going to banish our Magical Meltdown, meaning our fusion summons are no longer protected. However, that's not so much a concern of ours right now, so that's fine. Our opponent here then, of course, I mean, we had multiple plays anyway. We were going to find a way to bait that Shurag out. You could only remove 1 card, and we had too many cards for him to try and remove. He'll remove the Magical Meltdown. We're going to send the Dark Magician to the graveyard, then summon it from the graveyard to the field, and then we're going to normal summon our Alistair the Invoker, which will grab Invocation from our deck. We'll link off into Link Spider here with the Dark Magician, and then we'll link into Artemis the Moon Magistus. Then we'll link these 2 into Verte Anaconda. So then we're going to use Invocation first. If you use Predaplant and then if you use Predaplant first, no more summoning. So Invocation first into Makaba, then Invocation grab back your Alistair. Then your Predaplant Verte Anaconda will let you summon out DPE, pay 2,000, send 2 monsters. We're down to 700 life, so we're really sort of taking it risky here. We're going to use DPE to pop Anaconda plus the Access Code Talker. Alistair will boost up the Makaba's attack points, and we swing into Shurag, then take it out, and then we'll hit him directly for 2,500. He does get the ability to search for a Nerval, so our opponent definitely has plays he can still make. Whether or not he'll be able to make them through Makaba and a DPE is yet to be seen. So he goes for Karas here off the bat, discards the Nerval. That's the only other monster we know he has. So in theory, unless one of the 2 remaining cards in his hand is also a Tri-Brigade after he's used so many of his resources, it's unlikely he'll be able to continue to summon. Nerval, of course, grabbing a Kit here from the deck, which is fine. He's going to go to summon Fractal. That's his normal summon gone, so now we can pop his normal summon, and he has nothing else he can do. So we needed to stop the Karas, and we needed to stop his normal summon. That's what we were going into the turn thinking. He shouldn't have a way to extend past those 2 particular plays, and luckily for us, he didn't. So, you know, it worked out. We had the right idea, we had the right play, we had the right cards. Everything sort of lined up for us. Our opponent maybe jumped on the Shurag a little bit early, but it is what it is. So that is a decent demonstration of the deck. Again, it's not top tier uberly powerful. There's going to be a lot I still need to work on in relation to it, but this is the basic idea. I wanted to get this out so that you guys could make your own builds and own assumptions on it. So let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, so having a look at the deck profile yet again, first thing I'm going to say is, once again, the idea of me putting this out isn't me saying that this is the best way to play Dark Magician or even the best way to play Invoked Dark Magician. Rather, I'm just trying to spread the ideas that other people are giving to me out so that everyone has basically a knowledge that these ideas are even out there, because that's what a lot of people struggle with, the initial idea of a deck. Sometimes that's the hard part. So I'm spreading the idea so that other people can potentially play it like this, or maybe find a way that suits them a little bit more, or even simply a better way of playing it. So that is the possibility. So don't take everything I say here as law. A lot of this is going to be personal preference and in need of further optimization. So bear that in mind. Now, when it comes to Dark Magician itself, what is the power play for Dark Magician? Now, because you don't have the Dragoon or anything like that, the power play is going to be using your Dark Magical Circle to banish a card your opponent controls every single turn. So what you're doing is every time you summon a Dark Magician, you can banish a card in the field. How are you summoning Dark Magician every turn? You're doing it with your trap card Eternal Soul. So once per turn you can special summon a Dark Magician from the graveyard, and all of your Dark Magicians become unaffected by opponent's card effects. Now, this is not only probably the best card in the deck, it's also the worst card in the deck, because when this card is destroyed, it then destroys all of the monsters on your field. So it is really you really need to be sure that, you know, you're safe in doing it. That's why we're playing Solemn Judgment, to protect you from things like Lightning Storm and such. You can bump this up to 3 if you have it. I only have the 2. So how are you getting your Dark Magician in a position where you can summon it off of Eternal Souls? Well, it can be in your hand or in your graveyard. So to put it in your hand, not only are we running 2 copies, we're also running 2 copies of the Apprentice Illusion Magician, which when summoned will search for it. And as I said before, very easily summoned. Discard a card, special summon it out of the field. So basically it'll search for your Dark Magician. Magician Souls, on the other hand, will send your Dark Magician from the deck to the graveyard. So you have ample ways then of trying to get it into either your hand or the grave. You have things like Soul Servant and Circle, Magician's Rod, which will all either search out or draw or organize the top of your deck. Basically, they'll help you get to these cards and like add them to your hand. So those are integral. Upstart Goblin, if you have Upstart Goblin, I think is a fantastic addition. You may want to cut things like the Illusion Magician and maybe one other card to put Upstart Goblin into the deck. And the reason Upstart Goblin has such good synergy with the deck is Dark Magical Circle will stack the cards on top of your deck. Soul Servant will stack a card on top of your deck. If you can stack a card, Upstart Goblin then will basically give you the freedom to draw into whenever you want. You get to choose a card and draw it off of your Upstart Goblin, which is amazing. And of course, the more cards you have with this deck, like any other deck, the better. But this deck in particular appreciates having a lot of card advantage. So do bear that in mind. That is the reason as to why you would play Upstart Goblin. Again, it's a UR. I think it's a bit extortionate, the fact that it's a UR for, what, a draw 1. But you know what, to each their own. If you want to play it by all means. Alistair the Invoker then, so the secondary engine, which is 2 copies of Magical Meltdown, 2 copies of Alistair the Invoker, and 1 copy of Invocation here in terms of what is in the main deck. And then playing some of the Invoked Fusion monsters, of course. So the idea is, Alistair, you can normal summon it. When it's normal summoned, it will grab your Invocation from the deck. Then you can link summon Alistair into Artemis. Artemis, of course, needing just 1 level 4 lower spellcaster. Then you can use Invocation to fuse the Alistair that's in your graveyard and the Artemis that's in the hand into the Invoked Macabre. The Invoked Macabre, of course, being essentially an Omni-Negate, as I explained at the beginning of the video, and the main boss monster of the Invoked package. One of the perks of the Invocation is that if you're summoning an Invoked monster, you can use your opponent's graveyard to search for your second material. So if your opponent has something like DPE in play, you can of course search for, you can of course banish that DPE as well as your Artemis to summon whatever this says. This Invoked monster, the secondary material has to be a fusion monster, so you can banish their DPE. And this will on summon destroy a card, but anytime a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field, once per turn you get to pop it. So it helps basically just control the field a little bit more. Every time your opponent summons, you get to pop 1, which is brutal. So super strong, especially if you're banishing your opponent's DPE to summon it, causing a lot of problems for your opponent there. That's typically how it works. We're also playing Invoked Caliga. It's a decent floodgate. You'll very rarely use it. Basically, while it's face up, each player can only attack once or attack with 1 monster and use 1 monster effect. So again, a decent floodgate if it comes down to it. If your opponent has a dark monster you really need to banish from their graveyard, a Caliga is a good way of doing so, and it's also a decent floodgate if you have a bad hand, basically. So having a look over the rest of the deck, that's pretty much the gist of it, essentially. That is how most of it works. There are a few unique interactions here and there. For example, the Dark Magician Girl, Soul Servant will banish itself from the graveyard to draw 1 card per one of these names in the grave. So if you have the Dark Magician and the Dark Magician Girl either on your field or in your graveyard, Soul Servant will allow you to draw 2 cards. And you can send this to the graveyard using your Magician Souls. So it's literally just here for 2 reasons. That's the biggest reason, to draw an additional card off of Souls. The second reason is that whenever the Dark Magicians is destroyed, you can summon both a Dark Magician and a Dark Magician Girl from your graveyard or deck. You have to summon both. So if you don't have the Dark Magician Girl, then you don't get to summon anything. So those are the 2 main reasons it's even in here. It does have an actual functional use. It's not just aesthetic. And then the rest of it is essentially your DPE engine, of course, because the deck, as I said, lacks the ability to consistently put out a powerful turn 1 board, so the DPE adds to that massively. And then it's just hand traps. You have your Maxi, Ash Blossom, Judgment, your Impermanence. These can be anything you want. You're Caught by the Grave as well. Do whatever you want with them. And that's pretty much the deck. So if you have any questions, suggestions, anything you want me to do, see, or say, do let me know either in the comments below or by popping into the Discord to let us know. Basically, get a conversation going with people who probably know this deck a little bit more than I do. As you've seen, we upload all different kinds of decks onto the channel, so there are going to be ones here and there that I maybe don't know everything about. So if you want to get and speak to people and spread your opinions around, ask loads more questions, you can jump into the Discord and the people there will try to help you out as much as we possibly can. Vice versa, if you're someone who knows what they're talking about and would like to share their experience, by all means pop in as well. I'm always up to speak to someone who knows what's going on, so do consider that. But other than that, I'd just like to ask you once again to subscribe if you haven't already. We do pump out as much content as we possibly can, and we try to make it as high of a quality as possible. So we do try our best here to make it as good as we can. If you have any suggestions, let me know. But I'll stop rambling on here. It's a bad habit of rambling, and I'll leave you all on that note. I'll see you all in the next one.